In the heart of ancient Israel's story, we find a powerful psalm that echoes through time, Psalm 114. This sacred song wasn't just poetry, it was a reminder of God's mighty acts, sung during Passover celebrations to keep the memory of liberation alive. Imagine the Hebrew people, gathered around flickering lamps, reciting these words to pass down their history from generation to generation. Psalm 114 paints a vivid picture of nature itself, responding to the divine presence. It asks rhetorical questions. Why did the sea flee? Why did the Jordan River turn back? Why did the mountains leap like rams and the hills like lambs? These aren't puzzles to solve. They're celebrations of miracles that shaped a nation. Let's journey back to the events that inspired this psalm, starting with the Exodus from Egypt around 1446 BC under the leadership of Moses. Egypt, under Pharaoh's iron rule, was a land of pyramids and power, where the Israelites had been enslaved for over 400 years. Politically, Pharaoh saw them as a threat. A growing workforce turned into a potential rebellion. Economically, they built cities like Pithom and Ramesses, fueling Egypt's grandeur with their sweat and blood. But God heard their cries, sending plagues that shattered Egypt's gods and economy, from turning the Nile to blood, devastating agriculture, to darkness that symbolized the fall of Ra, the sun god. Finally, the Passover night arrived. Families marked their doors with lamb's blood, and death passed over them while striking Egypt's firstborn. In chaos, Pharaoh released the slaves. Over 600,000 men, plus women and children, fled into the wilderness. This mass exodus wasn't just a migration, it was a cultural revolution, forging a new identity for a people long oppressed. But freedom wasn't immediate. Trapped at the Red Sea, with Pharaoh's chariots thundering behind, the Israelites despaired. Moses stretched out his staff, and God parted the waters, a wall on each side, dry ground beneath. The sea didn't just part. It fled, as the psalm says, obeying the Creator. Archaeologists debate the exact location, perhaps the Gulf of Suez or Aqaba, but the event's impact is undeniable. It proved God's sovereignty over nature and empires. Crossing into the Sinai Peninsula, the people faced harsh deserts, where God provided manna from heaven and water from rocks. At Mount Sinai, around 1446 BC, the mountains trembled as God gave the law to Moses. Thunder, smoke, and quakes made the peaks leap like rams, symbolizing divine power. This wasn't mere folklore, it established the Torah, influencing legal systems worldwide, from ethics to justice. Years later, as they neared the Promised Land under Joshua around 1406 BC, another miracle. The Jordan River turned back. Priests carried the Ark of the Covenant into the flood-swollen waters, and they piled up, allowing safe passage. This echoed the Red Sea, reinforcing that God wasn't done with his people. Jericho fell soon after, its walls tumbling at a shout, technological simplicity triumphing over fortified cities. Psalm 114 captures these moments not as distant history, but as living testimony. Sung at Passover, it tied families to their roots, culturally preserving resilience amid exile and oppression. Politically, it fueled resistance against later conquerors like Assyria and Babylon. Economically, it reminded them of provision in scarcity, shaping a worldview where faith trumped material wealth. Now fast forward to the New Testament, around 30 AD. Jesus, in the Judean wilderness, faces temptation after 40 days of fasting, mirroring Israel's 40 years in the desert. Led by the Spirit, he confronts Satan, who twists Scripture to lure him. Turn stones to bread, jump from the temple, worship for kingdoms. But Jesus answers with Deuteronomy's words, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word from God's mouth." This wasn't random. It was a historical parallel. Where Israel grumbled and failed, Jesus succeeded, fulfilling the role of the perfect Israel. His responses echoed Psalm 114's themes. God who makes seas flee and mountains leap also sustains through his word. Culturally, Jesus' ministry challenged Roman occupation and Jewish legalism, sparking a movement that spread from Jerusalem to Rome. The political ripple. Christianity grew amid persecution, eventually influencing emperors like Constantine in 312 AD, who legalized it at Milvian Bridge. Economically, early Christians shared goods, disrupting class divides. Technologically, the spread relied on Roman roads and Greek language, turning